Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chastity, host of CNN's newest business show, First Move. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers. Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chastity, weeknights.
I'm Nick Payton-Walsh at the Al Nouri Mosque in the old city of Mosul, Iraq, and this is CNN.
Today is the deadline for the White House to decide if they're going to participate in the impeachment inquiry. Will they deflect or will they defend? Also, you may have heard about the heroes who rushed towards the London knife attacker. Now we've got footage of the moment that happened. You won't want to miss it. Also, the rainforests of the Amazon have been burning now for months. The president of Brazil says that this movie star is to blame. Hear his response next. Live from CNN World Headquarters in Atlanta, welcome to our viewers here in the United States and all around the world. I'm Michael Holmes. CNN Newsroom starts now. Welcome everyone. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it was repulsive that London Bridge attacker Usman Khan was out on early release after being convicted on terror offences. His comments to the BBC this morning followed British media reports that the UK Justice Ministry has begun an urgent review of the parole conditions for every convicted terrorist released from UK prisons. We're talking about 70 former inmates. The government's action comes after a convicted terrorist on parole stabbed 5 people, killing 2 of them near London Bridge on Friday. The dramatic video you see there shows bystanders rushing the man with a fire extinguisher and a long narwhal tusk, knocking the man down. He was shot and killed by police moments later. And video has surfaced of Usman Khan speaking to the BBC in 2008 when he was still a teenager. This was a few years before he was caught up in a plot to bomb the London Stock Exchange. Have a listen.
I've been born and bred in England, in Stoke-on-Trent in Cobridge, and the older community knows me. And they will know, if you ask them, they will know, like these labels, what they're putting on, like terrorist, this, that. They will know I ain't no terrorist.
That later changed, of course. Mark Bolton covering the story for us in London. Fill us in on the latest that we're hearing about this man, and also we've heard about at least one of the victims.
28-year-old British-born Usman Khan was first convicted at the age of 19 for his part in the stockbroker bomb plot, which was foiled. He was one of 9 men at the time jailed, and the man that jailed him, Justice Wilkie, said he was a serious jihadist. So previous, yes, he was being monitored, he was tagged, the police knew of his whereabouts, and yet nothing was done aside from what was done at the immediate aftermath of the original attacks at Fishmongers Hall on Friday. What is sad about the event is it was an event that he was made to attend due to the conditions of his parole. It was an event to rehabilitate prisoners, and we know that the one victim killed that has been named so far, Jack Merritt, a 25-year-old graduate of Cambridge University, was there specifically for that purpose to help rehabilitate former prisoners. His father, David, has spoken of a beautiful spirit, a champion of the underdog. Friends have said he has a wonderful soul, and those who also were at the event, former prisoners, have said he was a man that championed the underdog and had looked after them when most of society had abandoned them. What we also know is one other woman has been killed. She, as yet, has not been named. The National Health Service overnight told us that of the 3 people that remain in hospital being treated for severe injuries, one's condition have improved, so they're all stable. Those in hospital, 2 women and a man. Police have not updated regarding the possibility of conspiracy. They told us originally, and have stuck by that it's a lone acting individual, Usman Khan, in this case. They've searched properties in Staffordshire, 125 miles north of London, and are working in conjunction with the West Midlands Counter-Terrorist Squad and Staffordshire Police. Released from prison in December 2018, having served just under 7 years of a 16-year sentence for terrorism, British-born 28-year-old Usman Khan was shot dead by London police on Friday after they say he stabbed 2 people to death near London Bridge. In 2012, Khan was convicted for his part in a terror plot. Aged just 19 and one of a gang of 9, Khan pleaded guilty for his role in a plan to bomb the London Stock Exchange. At sentencing, the presiding judge warned Khan was a serious jihadist who would pose a significant risk to the public, even after his jail term was complete. Yet on appeal in 2013, the terms of Khan's sentence changed, allowing for his automatic release without a hearing in December 2018, on licence, a form of parole in the UK. One condition of his release from custody, Khan had to wear an ankle monitor so his movements could be tracked. He was wearing it during Friday's attack. Police later searched Khan's home in Staffordshire, 150 miles from London in the English Midlands, amid growing questions about his early release from custody following the 2012 terror conviction. Whitehall sources telling CNN Khan had historical links to a now banned radical Islamic group founded by Amjad Chowdhury.
Was there an intelligence failure leading up to yesterday's attack?
This is not the time to be talking about that. I am focusing entirely on going forward.
Friday's lunchtime panic prompted Prime Minister Boris Johnson to claim the system isn't doing its job.
This system simply isn't working. It does not make sense for us as a society to be putting people convicted of terrorist offences, or serious violent offences, out on early release.
Praise of the emergency services and individual acts of heroism have been universal. But now the British public will demand to know, how could a convicted terrorist wearing an ankle monitor carry out such a horrific attack on the streets of London?
And Mark, we mentioned earlier this review of other cases. There's been a lot of comments by politicians. This becoming a political issue with the election coming up?
Yes, it is. No real period of grace. The election is less than 2 weeks away. And so, of course, the political point scoring has begun. We have just recently heard from Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who said he will scrap automatic release and will push for those convicted of these offences to serve their full tariffs. He criticised the previous Labour governments for putting in automatic releases, but we know from fact that the IPP indeterminate sentences, which meant that anyone convicted had to be individually assessed for the threat they posed before they were released, were abolished under a previous Conservative and Liberal Democrat government. So more questions should be asked of the Prime Minister regarding that. Agreement from the opposition parties, they too, like the incumbent government, believe there needs to be more spending on counter-terrorism and neighbourhood policing, but there is a difference from the opposition leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who strongly this morning has said he does not agree with Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, that automatically convicted terrorists should serve their full sentence. He says instead individual cases should be assessed and, of course, measures taken on those merits. So division and much more of the division between the political parties to come between now and the general election on December the 12th.
Mark Bolton in London, thank you very much. All right, Majid Nawaz is co-founder and chairman of Quilliam Foundation, which is dedicated to countering extremism. Good to see you, sir. Usman Khan, this conference he was at was focusing on the rehabilitation of prisoners, and clearly with him that didn't work. What are the challenges when it comes to de-radicalisation? What makes it work? What makes it fail?
Well, thank you for having me. Let me begin by saying, actually, he wasn't at a conference for de-radicalising terrorist convicts. He was at a general rehabilitation program, and that's the problem. There was a prison governor, Ian Aitchison, who published 69 recommendations on a government-appointed review for what needs to be done in prison with regards to terrorist convicts who are ideologically indoctrinated, which is different to a murderer who kills somebody for a crime. That out of those 69 recommendations, the previous government accepted 68, and all of them have not been implemented. The 68 even that they accepted have been ignored since Prime Minister Theresa May, the government, this Conservative government we have at the moment, has completely dropped the ball on this issue of counter-radicalization and de-radicalization?
Well, a lot of people say, people deserve a second chance. Some of those who were radicals were duped and regret their actions, and that's true, I'm sure, for many, but others will always remain true believers. And also, I guess, if you've been radicalized once, you can be susceptible again. And that speaks to the difficulty of knowing which is which, I suppose.
Of course, and the only way we will know which is once we start these programs, these de-radicalization programs. It's a very difficult and inefficient way to proceed, but nevertheless it needs to be done. But side by side with that, a more efficient approach should be the preventative approach, and that's what we call counter-radicalization, to prevent communities entering down that path in the first place. Now, we've got a huge ticking time bomb here in the UK. Our security services tell us they're at capacity monitoring 3,000 operationally capable terrorists as of 2017, but there are 20,000 that they also need to be monitoring according to them, and they simply don't have the capacity for it. And then add to that, 9 out of 10 fighters who've returned from Syria who are walking free on our streets because there's no evidence to convict them. We need to seriously start looking at community-based initiatives for counter-radicalization and challenging some of this ideological indoctrination.
Those numbers are utterly extraordinary, and you can't blame authorities for not being across everyone. I mean, this Khan was meant to have been monitored as well. I mean, you cannot monitor hundreds and hundreds of people. And you make a good point there that this is likely to colour the debate over the repatriation of ISIS suspects from Syria and elsewhere, and not just in the UK, in Europe as well. People are obviously going to slip through the cracks. What is the answer when you talk about